My name is Mitch Benner, and we started this podcast to remove the stigma around sobriety from addiction.
My name is Aaron Nelson. Through our stories and the stories of our guests, we hope to help you find a new path.
Okay, so here we are, Shattered Darkness. This is episode 6. Thank you. I knew that.
We've got so many, it's hard to keep counting, you know?
No, dude, we're just rolling. I love it. I am Mitch Benner, your host. Aaron Nelson is the co-host. And today we have a special friend of mine. His name is Dave Hoffman. So Dave and I know each other. Dave's son, late son, and I went to high school together. And his son, Tyler, was my best friend in high school. And we did everything together. And unfortunately, Tyler's no longer with us. And that's why Dave is in here today, is to talk about Tyler's life, his experiences, what we can learn from the mistakes that he made, and how we can move forward and be better people. So Dave, I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Mitch. I appreciate the opportunity just to share. To me, it's still emotional. It's coming up on 3 years.
Yeah.
December 18th is the 3rd anniversary of my son's passing, and still always going to be an emotional thing. But, if I can help share that story and share some of the things that, we've gone through, not only as a family, but some of the things that we wish would have happened, that might have prevented Tyler from passing away. And if it helps somebody, I'm super happy to be part of this. So,
well,
yeah.
We realize that talking about this requires an extreme amount of vulnerability, and this is something that a small fraction of people on the planet understand.
Oh yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we're sensitive to that. But again, man, I just your strength is inspiring.
Well, thanks. It's been a journey.
And I think that's something too for us, is part of the reason we started this podcast was to have, expose the deep dark that we were in, that I'm sure you lived through.
Mm-hmm.
But to give that strength to people and help as many as we can. If we help one person, mission accomplished. And if it takes 2,000 episodes to do it, so be it.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing of all this is having the guts to come out and talk about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for having the guts to do it. And let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah.
So
let's go.
Just tell us a little bit about Tyler. Tell us about Tyler as a kid and your experience with him as a father.
So thinking back, Tyler as a kid growing up, just, always just a fun kid, always wanting to get involved in things, outgoing, a pretty good athlete growing up, we'd sit out in the backyard and, play wiffle ball. As he started getting into t-ball and playing t-ball, he became just, a huge baseball fan. For a couple of years, him and some friends did a fantasy baseball podcast together.
Awesome.
Could you imagine?
Dude, no way. I'm not enough stat base for that.
Well,
fantasy baseball is amazing.
Yeah.
I do it every year.
Yeah. But to do the podcast, just the effort that goes into doing that, because how many games every week and how many pitchers every week and how many of those things. And he would take 3 days and take 3 days off of work to prepare for the fantasy baseball draft.
Yeah.
And just to go through all the stats and figure out what he wanted to do. But, as a kid growing up, we got a lot of outdoorsy stuff, did a lot of camping together, went through scouting together, scouts. So Tyler went through and became an Eagle Scout along the way, did a really cool project down on Red Mountain Pass, down outside of Ouray, Colorado, between Ouray and Silverton, helping to work with some folks from Fort Lewis College to restore an old mine up in that area. And
it's a cool story.
So did a lot of those types of things, but I was an outgoing kid, easy to make friends. One of the things that I heard pretty clearly at his memorial service from everybody was, his intentionality to just kind of be with people and to be there. And when he was there, he was always just present. People would say, a lot going on. We were at a party or whatever it was. And Tyler and I'd be talking, and I felt like we were the only people in the room talking to each other, and I think he had that way of doing those things as he did that. Talking about his Eagle Scout project, of the funniest things, he recruited all the kids to help him, because you have to show leadership on those projects. And course, trying to recruit kids, scouts to help you out of Ouray, Colorado, when you live in Loveland, Colorado, is probably not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
We were on a patio in Germany, and we heard English speaking at the table behind us, and Tyler started talking to him, and I started talking to him. And the gentleman at that table happened to be the scoutmaster in Montrose, Colorado.
You got to be kidding me.
No.
That's crazy.
So
I didn't know that.
Tyler recruited all the help he needed.
That's hilarious.
For his project in Ouray, Colorado, sitting on a patio in Germany. So, I mean, just his ability to just kind of make friends with folks and get out and do that, So a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of sports stuff. Big hockey player, loved playing hockey, high school hockey, all the way through. So Joe Sakic was, the Colorado Avalanche was his first favorite player, and everything, every password I think he ever had the number 19 in it.
Yeah,
was Joe
Sakic. Yeah, I love it. I remember all that too, man.
Yeah.
Tyler and I were super connected through high school.
Yeah,
and I mean, just such a. I think I said this at his memorial service, but I never struggled with alcohol, drugs, things like that in high school. And I think it was because of the people I was around, and Tyler was a huge part of that. We were very into the youth group. We were very into doing the right thing and making sure our life turned out good, and all these things. And it's weird. Like after we graduated, him and I went on a 2-week road trip to California.
I remember that,
and that was just like the most amazing time, and it was so much fun. That was just Tyler. I just feel like being around him made me a better human being, and that's really my inspiration for this podcast. Was his death, and it hurt me so bad. And I didn't even realize it, but it drove me into the bottle so much farther. It made me realize that I disassociate myself from death and I manage it in damaging ways. And it's kind of a natural process for me. So, but I had a dream when I decided to get sober. I had a dream, and he was a huge part of it. And I just felt like God told me to like wake up and start this podcast.
Nice.
In memory and honor of him. And so we're introducing our tagline for our podcast. And this is something that Tyler had in his office. I looked at it every day, but it's just a simple phrase, and we're going to embody it in this podcast. But it's what good shall I do this day? And it's so true. That's what we're trying to do, just help the people that are living in the darkness and shatter that. So, man, dude, that's sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there, but
no, that's good.
Yeah. Anyways, so I guess kind of give us the background on Tyler, like, and leading up into, because it was. I remember getting the call, and I almost didn't believe it.
No, I sure didn't believe it. Yeah.
And it was just like he was the last person on planet Earth that I ever thought would take his own life, and so I don't know. I guess. Take us into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, just thinking of Tyler as he graduated from college and kind of went into the work world and went into PR. So did a lot of, and especially healthcare PR. And he really wanted to get more in media relations, but healthcare PR. And, a lot of that is just what's the crisis of the day, right?
Right.
It's crisis management things. And so, and he did really good, and he moved on from where he started, was in Nashville for a while, helped restart the company there, but he moved to San Francisco to get into more of the media relations piece of things, and, was very successful there in doing some things. And but I know he also struggled with, hey, are we, as a public relations group, are we really doing the right thing? Hey, we like to give a message sometimes that kind of spins things a little bit this way or spins things that way, depending on our client. And I know he struggled with some of that along the way, but he was still, getting out and visiting friends and doing all those things. But he was, Tyler and I, every summer we would take a long weekend and we'd go somewhere to catch a baseball game. So, go to Boston, and we went to Cincinnati. The last one we did was in San Diego, and spent the weekend there and played a round of disc golf at Morley Field, which is a great disc golf course So I'll give it a little plug here.
Yeah.
How many stadiums have you been to?
We probably went to 5 or 6 different games.
Oh, cool.
We started doing that, when he was in Nashville. And, we would spend those weekends and, we'd go out and we'd watch the game. We'd have a couple beers. We'd, go have dinner, have a drink, but when we were in Seattle, so my daughter lives in Seattle, and when she had her first child, we rented a house up in Seattle for 6 weeks, and Tyler came up for 2.5 weeks of those. And one of the things I noticed there was, we had a little bottle of bullet bourbon and would, play a game of cribbage at night and have a little thing, but then I'd go to bed. And when I woke up in the morning, the bottle of bourbon was a little lower than it was when we went to bed.
Yeah.
And I talked with Tyler about, his drinking and if that was a problem. And, he always told me, even when baseball trips, Dad, it's not a problem. I can not stop whenever I want doing that. And it's just not a problem. And I didn't push it any farther than that, which thinking back, I wish I would.
Yeah.
And I guess it is as an encouragement to folks, if you think maybe a friend or somebody has an issue, don't take that answer at face value.
Right.
You want to dig into that a little bit and see what's happening there. Anyway, so, when we left there and COVID was happening at the time. So during COVID, he now became a little isolated, working at home, working by himself. He had most of his friends were starting to have children, and they were like, we don't want.
I was going to ask you about that, and sorry to interrupt you, but what about like relationships in his life, significant love relationships and things like that? So
not a lot of significant love relationships. I mean, there was a girl in Nashville that, they were pretty serious for a while, and that broke up. I know as he traveled, there was a girl in Finland. So we actually did a trip where we were going through the Baltic, and Tyler joined us on that. And he stayed in Finland for a couple of extra days to kind of hang out with this girl in Finland. And there was a girl he met in Mexico City that, a lot of his college friends said they were just great together. And they also connected when he traveled in different places, Barcelona and Paris, they were there and she was there. But those relationships never developed into more. And I think Tyler probably wanted that to happen and was a little disappointed that things weren't moving any farther than they were. But a lot of those were long distance things as well. But, during that time and he was kind of isolated a little bit more alone. And I think he actually started drinking more at that point in time.
During COVID.
Yeah. And I think, statistically show that America started drinking a lot more during COVID. Boy.
Well, this is crazy. So the day after they issued the lockdown, they opened the liquor stores.
Oh, yeah.
Because hospitals came out and said, look, we can't manage all of these people that are about to go into alcohol relapse, or not relapse, but they're going to need to detox, and we can't handle them and COVID patients. So they had to open liquor stores, and that to me is just like, it is what it is, right? But it was just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And especially when people are isolated and they're out at home.
And they even called it that. I mean, social isolation, it's like they could have put a different term on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
and, I know that, Tyler was getting ready to come home for Christmas that year. So, there's lots of things that still haunt you as a parent where you're like, I probably should have called him the week before. You know the answers to those things that logically or your thinking's not right, but you still think about them a lot. And so he was coming home on Wednesday, and I got a call from our daughter on Monday that week that, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of Tyler all weekend, and haven't been able to get a hold of him. And his roommate, went and looked for him, and they couldn't find him. And they walked around the neighborhood trying to find his car, and his car's here. They found his car. And on Monday, his roommate found him in his room, and he had hung himself. So I get that call while I'm driving to Fort Collins one day on that Monday, and I just pulled over, cried for probably 45 minutes. I didn't know what to do. Quite a shock. And when I talked with his roommate, So I talked with his roommate, and his roommate was like, "Oh yeah, I haven't seen him since Saturday." So we kind of put pieces together and kind of figured he probably ended his life on Saturday, the 18th. And they, he said that Tyler had purchased a large bottle of Bullet bourbon that week, and it was pretty much gone. Not sure what happened. Probably will never know exactly what happened on that Friday night. What I do know is Saturday morning he was a big Liverpool fan for Premier League soccer. I think I have 12 Liverpool jerseys in a box at my house that he had, and scarves and different things. But he got up that morning, early morning, watched the Liverpool game with his roommate, and they kind of went separate ways. And his roommate said never saw him again after that. So,
and that's the thing to me with Tyler is like it had to have. Do you think that he planned that out long term? Like I feel like
No.
with him, it had to have been a momentary decision.
I think it had to be a momentary decision too, and again,
and an extreme lapse in judgment.
Yeah,
because of alcohol and things like that.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think he was probably, something probably happened. I don't know if it was a disappointment with a girl that was, I do know I saw an email later. I got into his Instagram account. It's a whole nother story about trying to unravel somebody's life and all the things in their life, but I did get into his Instagram account, and in the Instagram Messenger, I found this was in January, I found a note from a girl overseas, German girl, who said, "Hey Tyler, I know I was coming for New Year's and I told you I couldn't, but I'm now going to make it back to the States and I'd love to come by and see you." And this was, middle of January.
Yeah, after he passed.
After he passed. So whether, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But
see, and that's the thing that, I mean, obviously there's something going on mentally, and he just buried it.
Yeah, he buried it because, I talked to his friends and even my daughter. So Tyler and my daughter talked every day on the phone.
Yeah.
And that's what really concerned her when she couldn't get a hold of him.
Yeah.
And she had no clue. He never said anything to her about whatever was bothering him. His roommates had no clue. His college friends that he talked with a lot didn't have any clue. Nobody has any answers as to what was going on. And so that whole privacy thing, he was always a private kid anyway.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was always a pretty private kid growing up. And, I guess, whether he didn't feel like he could share his feelings, whether he didn't feel like these were things whatever it was, were things he could talk to anybody about, whether he didn't trust, that. Whoever it was, I don't know what it was, but he never talked. Matter of fact, I got a hold of a therapist he was seeing, and therapist, of course, told me he couldn't tell me anything that's going on. And I said, well, let me share a little bit of what I know.
Yeah.
And even a little note about some things that Tyler wrote. And I sent that to the therapist, and the therapist said he never talked to me about any of this stuff.
Really? See, and that's the thing is somewhere down the line, it's, in his mind, it was either a burden on somebody else. That's the thing that makes the most sense to me, because Tyler was such a giving person of himself, his time, his heart, that I just don't think that he wanted to be a burden on anyone else, and that kind of stuff is heavy. This is super heavy.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, to the listener too, it's, I think that's why communication is super important, and if you're going through a dark place, it's not like you have to shout it from a rooftop. But find somebody that you trust, that, you trust your heart with, that will help you.
Yeah. I think that's a good lesson for everybody. And for folks listening to this is you need to share what's going on with somebody.
Yeah.
And bottling it all up inside, not sharing with anybody, not only is going to hurt you more, but when something does happen like this, it really leaves a scar on everybody else.
Exactly.
Because everybody's like, nobody had a clue.
You think it'd be fair to say, I was sitting here thinking about a tough question, but I think this is a better way to ask it. Back to the if he's a burden for someone or potentially feeling that way. And obviously we'll never really know, but this could be somewhat rhetorical though. Wouldn't it be so much better if he just came over and laid it all out there?
Oh yeah.
And then you deal with that as a father,
right,
and as a man, someone you can trust,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just, deciding the route that he chose.
Yeah. I think all of his, friends, one of his really good friends, who was also in youth group with you guys.
yeah,
I
know who you're talking about.
Who was in San Francisco, and they played disc golf together every week, and they did all the Liverpool. I think this friend maybe had more Liverpool jerseys than Tyler did, but they did all the Liverpool games together and everything. And I mean, just to sit down with your friend and just lay it all out like you said, and yeah, it's better. There's probably some fear in doing that, but one of the things I've learned over my life, is that going through darker times and sharing those with somebody and working through those together builds really strong relationships.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's, if I'm mistaken. So we got into COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and then so a whole year of COVID, roughly.
Yeah.
Now, were there signs of like heavy drinking then, to your knowledge, or was it just, I don't know?
Yeah, great question. To my knowledge, not signs of heavy drinking, but I know that even when Tyler would come home, and would sit out on our back patio and would like, even in the cold in the winter, we had these heaters, those restaurant kind of heaters.
Yeah.
We had those in our backyard, and would sit out there and would have a little glass of whiskey and just talk for a long time. And, he would stay up probably till 2:00 in the morning, and I'd go to bed. He probably had another one. But again, when I asked him about it, and I know my wife has said she asked him about it a couple of times too. And, he just was like, hey, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. And, we took that at face value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you in that moment? And that's where I want to come back to, because this all starts with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the addict, with the desire to not be this person, or maybe you're facing a ultimatum or something like that, But I think at the end of the day, it's like, we could sit here and say what if, but at the end of the day, it was up to Tyler.
Yeah.
And something happened along the line that made him feel like that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And I just want everybody listening to this to know that it is okay. And it's absolutely necessary, to bring that up. And, I'm a year into this journey, starting this podcast, doing all this stuff. And I can tell you right now, when things get really hard, it's like, okay, here we go. It's time to get broken down a little bit and come back stronger. And it's all it's all how you perceive it. It's all how you look at it. And, if you look at it, your life, and you're like, yeah, this sucks, but I know I can come back stronger. You absolutely can do that.
Yeah. And I think even, you'd asked the question earlier, whether this was kind of a spur of the moment kind of thing. And, a couple of things that make me say absolutely yes to that. So Tyler, in his work life, he had a really good, I wouldn't call it a calendar, but he would keep all the notes, on a daily basis of all the stuff he has to do today. Not necessarily like a to-do list, but more of just dialogue that he made with himself.
Yeah, kind of like a web, like just I do the same thing. Yeah,
and his notebook was there, and the day before he passed away, he had things in there like, hey, make sure you've got a ride to the airport on Wednesday because you're flying home. Call this friend in Nashville because we're planning a trip to Barcelona the end of January. Oh, don't forget you have Dad's fly rod down in your storage cabinet. So when you go home on Wednesday, make sure you bring Dad his fly rod back. The person he worked for in San Francisco, where he got most of his work from, when we had a little memorial service out there, he brought a contract to that memorial service. And he said, this is a contract with a company we've been working with on for 1.5 years. And the day before Tyler passed away, he got the contract signed.
What the fuck, man?
So he was working, he was doing stuff, he was planning, he was preparing for something, and then something happened. And for whatever reason, he felt he couldn't talk to anybody about it.
Jeez. And I hadn't heard that whole story from you guys. And I don't know, it just solidifies everything that we're doing for, and it's so unbelievably painful to think about it and to ask those questions, and I don't know. That's why I think Aaron and I, we just want to take that and run with it and be like, look, this is not okay. Our generation struggles with these mental health issues. Alcohol has been so prevalent in everything that we've been a part of, and I'm a millennial, I'm 38 years old. So, that generation, high school through the early 2000s. And it's weird, man. There is so much struggle in that generation with that stuff. And it's sad to hear how that story ended, but it's not over yet.
No, it's not over yet. And I think there's, through things like this and through other things, right. I think there's that hope, so sharing our stories, sharing our struggles. One thing I want listeners here to know is that if you get to that point where you're thinking, boy, I'm not sure I can move forward. And I think ending my life is an option. Ask yourself, who can I reach out to right now? But think about the people that are left behind that you love, because there's a lot of people you love that are left behind that are put in a situation like I am right now, where it's, the rest of my life, I'll be carrying this with me.
Absolutely.
And, trying to unravel, it took me almost a year to unravel Tyler's financial life and just close things down. And for the longest time, I couldn't even process the fact, and I couldn't really process my grief because I was so busy doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's a organization that I came close to and learned a lot about them. And the stats of death by suicide, men,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. So much higher for men. Right about our age, maybe between 30, I'm probably going to butcher this, but in the 30s is what I specifically remember, just because it kind of hit a little bit harder. Right. That was the time where most people take their own lives. It's I don't know. I work out, it's like, I'm not trying to think of like, we're all like jocks or like meatheads or whatever, but you kind of have that stereotypical male.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And if you talk to a therapist, right? Or like Sopranos is a really good example. I don't know if you've seen the show, but
I haven't seen the show. I know of it though.
Yeah. So mobsters,
right?
And if you talk to a therapist, you're right there with women. And again, that's their portrayal. But again, the lead character, Tony Soprano, talks to a therapist the entire time. And so it's something where it's very prevalent. And the show has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, but it's very prevalent that we need it. And you don't have to go out and tell everybody you're going to see a therapist, if you don't want to. I think it's great. The whole normalizing sobriety is normalizing just communication and just feeling good.
Right.
Exactly. That's what we're trying to do. We don't have to be these dudes that just walk around. Everything's fine, because everything's not fine.
It's not fine. And you know what, dude, there
never is.
You want to talk about a spiritual, let's just go into the spiritual realm for a minute, and I'm going to profess right now, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he died on the cross for us. That is my belief system. So, you talk about that. I believe in spiritual warfare. And I think that the things that are going on in our world right now are so demonic, and it's inviting. And so now, as a spiritual man, the second I walk out of my house, I'm a target.
Yes.
Because if I get taken out, then the rest of my family can get taken out.
You wake up, you're a target.
Exactly. Man. And by stuffing these things, I heard this on another Facebook or podcast, but it said the number one thing that a man can have and give his family is experience in the world. Like, this is right, this is wrong, this is where we should go, this is what we should not engage in. That's experience. The only way to gain experience is to communicate, is to talk, is to go through it, is to work through it, and to lay those things out. It's why I'm such a huge proponent for rehab.
Yeah.
Because even if you're just struggling with mental health and you're not an alcoholic, go to rehab. Seriously, they just sit in a room and break themselves down. That's all you're doing. And you're admitting to the dark corners of your life. You're shattering the darkness. You're leaving the pieces that you don't like, and you're taking the pieces that you can learn from, and you're moving on.
Yeah, and I would add to that, part of our story is with Tyler's death and the attacks, through the spiritual world, especially on my wife.
Yeah.
She ended up attempting to end her life.
Right, exactly, which is insane.
But that was part of that. She spent, she spent 30 days in an inpatient rehab center, a really good one, and another 30 days in an outpatient rehab center. And then here we are 2 years later from that, and she's like, I need to go back for a tune-up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we went back to the 30-day outpatient place for a tune-up. And, good for her.
Your brain is your CPU for everything. Mm-hmm. If your brain's not okay, it's going to affect everything else. Yeah. Everything. Mm-hmm. And so that's just really, and you want to talk about true strength. It's not stuffing your emotions. It's not carrying this stuff around, because eventually you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt somebody else. You're a ticking time bomb. Mm-hmm. True strength is sitting down with people that you love and being like, hey, I'm really struggling in this area of my life.
Yeah.
I need some help.
And I think if you can do that early, because wherever Tyler was when he ended his life, he knew some of the things that I was going to feel.
Yeah.
He wrote short little notes to my wife and myself and our daughter. And the one he wrote to me was like, I can't even fathom the emotions this is going to cause in you. That's the line he wrote to me. And he knew, and yet he, at the time, couldn't do anything about it, even though he knew. Right. So start early, don't be afraid to, if he had started those things early and started talking with people earlier, I think he could have got through that moment.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about Tyler's life, the pain, obviously, that you guys have gone through over the last few years. What have you guys learned through this experience? I mean, this is obviously a very unique experience that a lot of people don't go through.
Yeah. It's a club I hope nobody else has to join ever. I know as I talk to people, there's more members of the club than you would want to be members of it. But, I think the things that we've talked about, several of the things that, I've learned. One is that being able to talk about things and share your feelings and share what's going on for me, even going through this, working with my therapist and talking through everything. Just being able to talk about things and having somebody to talk with,
right?
That can, and whether they do anything or not, but whether they just sit there and listen, right?
Yeah.
So I talked about the baseball. I'll give you one example. I talked about the baseball trips my son and I did. So I was talking to a good college friend of mine, and I was going to go back to work, and he called, and I couldn't go back to work. And he said, what happened? I said, I walked in my office. I saw the baseballs up on the shelf, because every time Tyler and I, we got a baseball, the team with their logo, and we put the dates and the scores of the games, and we both signed it. I said, I saw those baseballs there, and I just lost it. Couldn't go back to work. And he said, what were you thinking? And I said, well, there'll never be another baseball on the shelf. And he said, oh, there can be another baseball. It might not be the same.
Right.
And next summer, there's now 11 of us, my college friends, going to San Diego for a long weekend. Last summer in June, we went to Minneapolis and we saw the Twins play. And year before that, 6 of us started in Atlanta, went to a Braves game. And so he reinstated that, but it was just because he listened and he said, here's something I can do.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him. And I guess that's another thing I would say is, if you think there's something you can do, just do it. Don't ask.
Right.
Just do it.
Absolutely.
That's a cool thing too that you just said, is because you've listened.
Yeah.
If you want to be someone there to help people, and I feel like I struggle with this sometimes, just the folks whenever you want to help someone, you kind of see what the problem is and you want to insist on that problem. But I think you're going to learn a lot more from listening, because you might see red, but the problem is green.
Right.
And you'll never get that without listening and understanding.
And asking some of those questions, like my friend in Atlanta asked me, so what was it that caused you to do that? I saw the baseballs on the shelf. Yeah. So why was that a problem? Because there's never going to be another baseball.
Right.
Oh, I can help with that.
Right. We can, and that's
turn it to a positive, right?
Right. And you know what? That goes exactly into kind of what we're talking about of shifting your mindset, right?
Yeah.
And perspective.
Yeah.
Pain, in my opinion, pain and failure are guidelines. They're tools.
Yeah.
They're things that are like, hey man, you're off course right now. And it's like, if things are happening in your life like that, like they're supposed to hurt because it's a checks and balances, and it's just changing your perspective to that. So that's awesome. And you don't really get the opportunity to talk this honestly and openly about somebody that's lost a child.
Yeah, I think that's right. And even that listening part that you were talking about, when you listen, going back to the, kind of tagline for this podcast, what good shall I do this day?
Yeah.
You're not going to know what good you can do this day unless you've listened to something, right?
Exactly. And it's like spirituality for me. It's, people always ask me, what church do you go to? And we're not going to a church at the moment, but I feel like my spirituality is a radio station, and it's like I tune into God as much as I possibly can, and that relationship with him is very real. It's just like you sitting here with me, like, and so, yeah, that's a great thing to have as well. But
and as you mentioned that, Mitch, relationship with God, and I have a very strong relationship with God. I always have now. It came into question quite a bit after Tyler died.
I bet.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. It came into question. And but as I look back over the last 3 years, and I think of, what did they say? God puts people in your life to do God's work.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you're like, God, where are you?
Yeah.
Where are you? What are you doing? How come you're not here? And then your friend from Atlanta steps in and says this, oh, there you are, God.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's another thing of being tuned into that radio, like being tuned into that, right? Because you have to look for that, because God really truly does work in mysterious ways. And it's these coincidences, right, in our lives that happen, or these strong pulls in our heart that happen. And, they're very real situations, but you have to be tuned into it for sure. And that's, I want to say too, to the listener, that is my belief system. That is not, we are not pushing anything. I really truly feel like for recovery, you just need to find something that's bigger than yourself. Whatever that looks like. Live for something that's outside of yourself.
Could be mom, could be brother, could be sister, could be someone you barely know.
Yeah, find a purpose and attack
it. Could be a place you volunteer. Could be, whatever a cause is that you really believe in, right?
Yeah.
Frank, like this is, it's kind of hard to, is there anything in here that you want to leave that we haven't asked? Because it's such a hard thing to talk about.
Yeah, I think we've talked about most of the things that have to do with your mental health and, alcohol and just being real with yourself about things, I don't know about you guys. I go to my doctor, once a year for my checkup, and there's always the question, well, do you drink alcohol? Well, yes. And how much do you drink?
Right.
And every year it seems like the statistics get more and more. So like, I remember the first year he asked me that. I'm like, yeah, have, a beer 3 times a week. Oh, that's good, because statistically, if you have more than a beer a day,
right,
you're drinking too much. Well, then the next year, statistically, if you have more than 2 beers a day, you're drinking too much. Oh, statistically, if now you have more than 16 drinks a week, you're drinking too much. And I'm like,
it's like ticking up. Exactly. Like the standard is getting higher and higher.
Yeah, the standard just keeps getting higher and higher. But to really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, about that. We've become an alcohol-free home.
Yeah.
So we're a dry house, and people come over, and I'm like, we're an alcohol-free house. Sometimes it's a hard conversation to have with people you invite over for dinner.
Right.
Oh, should I bring a bottle of wine? No, you shouldn't.
Yeah. And I think there's a good way to approach that. But let me ask you this: in all of that, do you feel like your responses from other people have been fairly respectful?
Oh, they've been very respectful.
Yeah.
I think when you do mention it to people and you do talk with people about it, they're very respectful about it. I think the problem is we choose not to talk about it because we think it's going to be awkward and we
Right.
think it's not going to be received.
Exactly.
Well.
That is so big. So
Yeah, exactly.
we're doing in that sober group that I'm in at my work. We are hosting a special class that we're opening up to the entire company specifically on the holidays, right? It's what, November 21st. So we got Thanksgiving coming up. Yeah. Then we got endless Christmas parties. And then we got New Year's. Yeah. So people have this built up thing. You're not drinking. That's weird.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, it's honestly not like that.
I've never experienced that. Never. In my sobriety, I've never experienced somebody that was like, what? You're not drinking? Like, what's wrong with you? It's always like, oh my gosh, dude, like, good for you. I think maybe people knew that I had a problem, obviously. Like, I was probably that crazy bastard at a party that ruined everything. You know, so they're like, thank God Mitch isn't drinking.
Yeah. You know, and I haven't been that guy. You know, I'll still go out and have a beer with somebody after work or something. Yeah. But, you know, one of the things, you know, so you sit down, you have a beer, and then somebody will say, hey, do you want another? And I'm like, tell you what, if you guys want another, go for it. I'm going to go get a glass of water.
Right.
Nobody says
anything, you know, and it's these ideas that we put in our own mind. You know, we get in our own way with these thoughts and these ideas that people are going to hate us for these issues that we have in our life.
Or think we're, you know, whatever. And I think that's just not the case.
I agree.
But the only other thing I think to leave is, you know, and I mentioned this, you mentioned the statistics, you know, the statistics when I looked them up is that suicide is the fourth leading cause of death of young people between the ages of 25 and 40.
Okay. Yeah.
Behind heart disease and accidents and drug overdoses.
Crazy.
Suicide's the fourth leading cause. But, you know, other stuff happens in life, right? I mean, accidents and heart, all those other things do still happen, diseases and things. And I think, you know, if I were to leave anything else for folks is, you know, you're 35 years old, you're 40 years old. If you don't have a will, get one.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, dude.
If something does happen to you, you're going to leave those behind with a mess to clean up.
Mm-hmm. That's wise.
Yeah.
I guess in closing, like how are you guys doing today? I know that Leanne is, you know, she's still working through the mental health thing, and you know, you're seeing a therapist, but you know, how are things? You know, obviously you guys are always constantly talking about Tyler's life, pushing that phrase, you know, what good shall I do this day?
Yeah. You know, I think we're getting to a point where it's Tyler's death will always hurt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't tell you how many times, you know, we have one of those photo frames at home where photos kind of roll through and different things. And whenever I see a picture coming up of Tyler and I at a baseball game somewhere, you know, we're standing out in front of Great America Ballpark or whatever it is, and it just makes me smile.
Yeah.
Just awesome, man. Those memories make me smile. And that's becoming more and more real all the time of living with the memories, but it's always going to hurt that he's not there.
Yeah.
But we're doing good. We're coming into a tough time of year, you know, right now.
Family and all that.
With family and with, you know, the anniversary of Tyler's passing. And so we'll see what happens. You know, we've got a good, strong family. I remember the first year anniversary of his passing, we went to a whole family spent, you know, time in San Diego, and we actually went back to Morley Field and played around a disc golf together. And it makes me, one of the things that brings me a lot of joy too is, you know, on Tyler's birthday and on the anniversary of Tyler's passing, I get texts and I get emails from his friends all over the world.
That's awesome.
And, you know, last August on his birthday, I got a text that, you know, one of his friends from California had flown out to visit his friend in Nashville, and some of his friends from Denver flew out there, and they sent me a picture of the 5 of them playing a round of disc golf on Tyler's birthday at a disc golf place in Nashville.
That's amazing.
Just want to let you know we're celebrating Tyler today. Yeah. So those things I think are, you know, make me happy. And,
absolutely.
But we're doing better. We're still, you know, who knows, you know, a friend of mine told me the analogy used is he goes, you know, when you lose somebody like that, you're always carrying this suitcase of grief around with you. You're just carrying it with you.
Yeah.
And every once in a while it pops open and you have to look through it.
That's that is a good analogy, and kind of helps us on the other side of that understand that,
But those times where it pops open, I think, become farther and farther apart as time goes on. That doesn't mean you're still not carrying it with you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Just the times that it pops open can become farther apart.
And I look at Tyler's life, and I mean, he lived a great example of a life. He's such a great friend, great human being. I loved every second that I got to spend with him. But you know what? I look at his life too, and it's his death as well as like, okay, it's time to wake up here. It's almost like a line in the sand for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, all right, I'm done. Like, I'm not losing any more friends. Like,
well, I'm glad, and I hope it is for others as well.
Exactly. And we're going to use his life to change others and hopefully change the world, because it's okay. It's okay to be broken.
And I would challenge anybody here that's listening to this to say, are you broken? Yeah, everybody's broken in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And who do you have to talk to about that?
Right.
Now, if you don't have anybody to talk to, part of what we're doing too is we are trying to monetize this thing for the benefit of others.
Right.
So if you don't have anybody to talk to, or you don't have a way, you don't have insurance, you don't have a car, whatever the whatever the limit is, we are trying to limit that. Reach out to us if you want to help. I promise you it's going to be put to good use. But we're happy to be blessed. We have family here. There's someone listening that doesn't. You're better off in this world.
And, when you talk to people, just that point you made, whether you don't have, I do know from phone records, because we shared a family phone plan, and looking at Tyler's phone records, the day before he died, he called 5 alcohol rehab places to see if he could get in for a 30-day alcohol rehab. And I talked with them. I called all of them, and they told me, we talked with him and we told him we did not take his insurance.
Which is crazy to me. Like,
I fucking hate insurance.
And you know what? There's a movement around
all of
making sure these people get help. But that's what I think what Aaron's trying to say is we're here to try to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Like if money's an issue, it's about community.
Right.
And it's about being connected to people that see the true you, see what you're going through. And I think just going to an AA meeting could do that. If you're having a hard time getting into a rehab facility, go to an AA meeting.
Yeah.
Call a family member
and check with your insurance too. My insurance, for example, when I was drinking, it only covered 2 episodes free of charge, or two visits free of charge, and then the rest was on me with copay or however that works. But look into that, because even if it has 1 or 2,
go. Or if you have a passion to donate and you want, we focus time, talent, treasure. Those are your ways you can donate, right? So.
Yeah.
If you got money and you don't have the time and you want to throw money at this thing, we would love to eventually be a 501c3 that has financial opportunities for people to get into the programs they need to. So, I mean, all of this, like, we're 6 episodes into this. Who knows? We're just going to sit back and let God take control of this thing. So, but we are asking for help. And, if you're there and you want to help out, we'd love that.
But your suggestion, talk to your insurance company, because they may tell you, oh, here's the place that does take our insurance.
Right. Yeah. Because AA didn't work for me initially because it wasn't where I'm then as a spot I am now. Rehab worked for him. I don't know if rehab would have worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If there's so many ways to get help. Don't just think AA or don't just think this.
And you know what? The other thing too is this podcast is a platform to share experiences. Right. It's not just Aaron and I's experiences. It's not just Dave's experience. It's your experience. Reach out to us. If you have a story to tell, we'd love to sit down with you and talk to you and, see if you'd be a good fit to actually get on the podcast and tell your story. So if that's something, any of those things fit you guys, I'm probably going to screw this email address up, but I think it's shattereddarkness5@gmail.com.
The 5 was from you, right? It's not just we're not the 5th Shattered Darkness, but the 5 has meaning to Mitch.
It does, because when I was a child, my parents always would make us pick a number between 1 and 10, and 5 was in the middle, and I'd win like every time. So that's
so five's a winning number.
Yeah, so 5 was always my winning number.
So everybody in the world's an idiot except for you, because we all pick 7, 8, everything but 5.
Exactly. I pick 5 and I win every time.
And so your mom, you did this with your parents?
Yeah.
Maybe you're just the favorite, and they just, oh, Mitch wins.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? But that's why 5. That's literally why 5 became my favorite number. But anyways, shattereddarkness5@gmail.com. This is not just about us. It's about you guys. It's about being honest, and it's about saving a life.
And the other thing I'll tell you, I learned if you want to do that, is telling your story will help you heal.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So true. It's so true. And it's the simplest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell the truth.
Yeah, just tell the truth. Tell your story.
Yeah. Dave, is there anything else that you would like to leave for our listeners before we say bye-bye?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here. Thanks for having me on, letting me tell my story. Because every time I tell it, it helps me. And thanks for letting me introduce Tyler to folks too, because it's always fun. It always makes me smile when I get to introduce him to folks.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that.
Well, Dave, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time here. Your strength, man, is unbelievable. I never understand, hopefully, what that feels like and what you guys are going through, but you're responding to it in a way that is absolutely inspiring. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, and blessings to both of you as you kind of go down this podcast journey. And for those that are listening, if you have questions, if things are in your head, just reach out to somebody.
Reach out. Exactly. Aaron and I have no formal training. We've just both struggled with alcohol at one point in our life. So anyways, we appreciate you guys listening, taking the time to hear what we have to say. So we'll see you next time.
Bye.